This morning before I came in here, somebody showed me a TikTok video of a pregnant woman at 8 months pregnant. She is an associate professor at the Columbia Medical School, and she is saying F Trump and gobbling Tylenol with her baby in her placenta.
Okay.
Jesus.
The Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., clearly doesn't know how pregnancy or like a woman's body works if he thinks that a baby normally lives inside of the placenta. So there was a lot more discussed during this meeting. But Cenk, as you know, like a man or just as a Cenk, what is your initial reaction to what RFK said right there?
Here's my reaction as a Cenk. So yesterday we showed the clip of Kristi Noem, Department of Homeland Security chief, and asked about what is habeas corpus, the foundation of Western civilization. She had no idea, none. Gave it the widely incorrect answer. And now here's the head of Health and Human Services and thinks that babies are inside the placenta. I mean, no, there has to be some bare minimum competence in our government. This can't be like a popularity contest and like, oh my God, hey, that homecoming queen is hot, so let's just make her something or other and not care that they don't know anything. So look, we're gonna give you the rest of the story here, but this whole Tylenol, autism, placenta thing is madness. So here's the story.
It is madness. It's especially fun for me that these are the people who are governing my body anyway. So during a cabinet meeting yesterday, RFK Jr. was back on his anti-Tylenol high horse, trying to convince the public yet again that Tylenol's active ingredient, acetaminophen, causes autism. But now the plot thickens as it always does. He is now linking that same Tylenol, acetaminophen, circumcision to autism like via Tylenol. Take a look.
There's 2 studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism. And it's highly likely because they're given Tylenol. So, none of this is this positive, but all of it is stuff that we should be paying attention to.
Okay, but seriously, like what are they even talking about? Where did any of this even come from? Why are they so obsessed with Tylenol all of a sudden? So one of the studies that he's most likely referring to is a study from the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine titled Ritual Circumcision and Risk of Autism Spectrum Disorder in 0 to 9-year-old Boys, and that's from the National Cohort Study in Denmark. So the study looked at 342,877 boys born between 1994 and 2003. And they found that circumcised boys were more likely than intact boys, that's the word they used, to develop ASD before age 10. And they believe that this is caused by the pain that is associated with the circumcision operation and the negative long-term psychological consequences of that pain. However, if you go to the National Library of Medicine's website, where it lists the study, you will see this little note at the bottom there. It refers people to the letter titled Circumcision Pain Unlikely to Cause Autism on page 297. So maybe RFK never made it to page 297. And the authors of that letter, Brian J. Morris and Thomas E. Wiswell, they state that the original study is very flawed and it's purposely looking for an adverse effect of circumcision. So from the National Library of Medicine, they say the authors cite a survey that found pain was high in 4% of infants during 6 weeks post-circumcision. Since the Danish study was about pain, why didn't Frisch and Simonson examine other painful conditions? Well, urinary tract infections are associated with excruciating pain. They are common and very much higher in uncircumcised male infants and boys. If the author's pain hypothesis were correct, then autism spectrum disorder should be associated with urinary tract infections and therefore being uncircumcised. So the science that RFK Jr. is relying on is highly questionable to say the least, and it's admittedly biased. Trusted medical groups overwhelmingly disagree with his general fear mongering about Tylenol, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine and the American College of OB-GYNs both endorsed using acetaminophen during pregnancy in September 5 statements. Acetaminophen, Tylenol, is one of the few painkillers that pregnant women are okay to use during their pregnancy. And the funny thing is, RFK Jr. even admitted during the meeting that studies have not proven acetaminophen actually causes autism, but he will, quote, make the proof.
It's not dispositive that causes autism, but it is so suggestive that anybody who takes this stuff during pregnancy, unless they have to, is irresponsible. There are 15 rodent studies. Every one of them shows if you give it to the mother, the babies, and particularly the male babies, have profound neurological and behavioral changes. And there are dozens of studies that show the countries that use the most of the highest level of autism. Cuba has the lowest level in the world of acetaminophen use, and it has the lowest autism rate in the world. So this is not dispositive. It is not proof. We're doing the studies to make the proof.
They're doing the studies to make the proof. That's what he said at the end there, in case you missed it. And what was Trump's response? Even if women and children don't have many other options for pain relief, Trump says it's fine, just tough it out. Again, just more pain for the women. Take a look.
This is a horrible thing. And if you don't take it, I mean, you have to tough it through sometimes. There are other things you can do, but you have to tough it out. It's easy for me to say. But I think you're going to see numbers that will be it'll be so significantly improved, and maybe fully improved. I mean, there's something there, there's something going on, and we have to address it.
So they have managed to blame autism on women. Again, they've managed to make being a woman even more painful for women. And like what stood out to me, Cenk, in the whole time when they're talking about this, when they've decided that they've figured out the cause for autism finally in babies, at no point was there any kind of support offered for these women, right? There was no, just deal with it. Just take the pain and deal with it. There's no talk of like infrastructure and like women's health care and how it is like completely being eroded across the country, especially in states like mine. I live in Texas, and it's very scary, honestly, to be a woman in Texas, especially a woman of birthing age. And I will say that personally. But I do want to kind of refer back to that first clip that we saw when RFK Jr., I know it's kind of hard to understand what he's saying sometimes, so I just want to make sure people get this, but he was talking about a TikTok that he saw, and that's what he decided to bring up in this meeting in front of the press and in front of the president. But it was a TikTok of this woman. I don't remember exactly, but I think she was some kind of doctor, some kind of physician or medical professional from Columbia University. So God knows, like, she must be more qualified than either Trump or RFK Jr. And she was there taking Tylenol as a pregnant woman and saying F Trump. And he said that this was Trump derangement syndrome, that women so hate Donald Trump that they're willing to just like endanger their babies out of spite because they hate him so much, they're just gonna do exactly the opposite of what he tells them to do. Donald Trump also is not a doctor, right? And he will remind you that. He'd say, I'm not a doctor. But in that same press conference, he also said, oh, but you know what? I've studied this stuff a lot, so I know what I'm talking about. I don't know, Cenk, what he means when he says he studies this stuff a lot, because like, what does he, is he in a lab? Has he done like hours and hours and hours of research, like years worth of research? What has he done that he's so well versed in this stuff that women who are actually medical professionals should listen to him instead of their own research and their own expertise? I don't know.
Yeah, well, first of all, Trump does that all the time. He says, nobody knows more about healthcare than I do. Then he'll come out in his first term after they started discussing replacement for Obamacare, and Trump came out and said, no one knew that healthcare was this complicated, except we all kind of know. All right, so on this one, guys, it's not like the big drug companies are the most trustworthy folks in the country, right? So we've seen them do plenty of wrong things. First of all, they buy off the government and they won't let us negotiate drug prices. They extend their monopolies for a long time. We saw what they did with OxyContin. They have faulty products. So if you say to me, oh, bow your head and just trust Big Pharma, I got a hell no on that, right? Now, have those companies at different times throughout history said a lot of dubious things and then eventually been proven wrong? Yes, for example, they used to pretend that cigarettes were good for you. And then, when you were pregnant, they said, oh yeah, you can drink, no problem. Lead was a gigantic problem, but lead was in so many of the products, so they covered that up, right? So it's a slightly different thing, but it affected our health, right? So again, tons of skepticism is warranted. Now, What I was hoping for, and I know I didn't really expect it, a little naive to expect it, but with RFK Jr. kept talking about, debate, I want to debate and I want to expose this, etc. I was hoping for two things. One is, well, maybe he helps around the, like as he might do damage in other areas, he might help around the edges, like he talks about, all the junk that we put on our food, high fructose corn syrup, et cetera, et cetera. Those are good. That's right. That's true. So, and he started talking about, all the different ways that it's processed food. And then as soon as he got into office, Big Food came in and they're like, yeah, we're gonna need you to shut up about that. And all of a sudden that's it, gone. Nobody's talking about it anymore. So the one kind of like upside he had, the minute he ran into industry, he lost instantly. So now he's going to war against Tylenol because this causes autism, but with no evidence. So why do I think that he's wrong and the drug companies are right? Because doctors over the long run were like, no, cigarettes are not good for you. They're very, very bad for you. And industry was like, no, shut up, shut up. And no, the doctors won and they were right. The doctors said that alcohol while you're pregnant, terrible idea, etc. The doctors and the scientists have been proven right 1,000 times over. They're not always right in the short term. That's why you need rigor. And by the way, you know who wants rigor and to be tested? And to make sure that they're right? Scientists do, that's literally their job. Their job is to test things to see if they are right or not. And then when they have a thesis, they all collectively test that thesis. There's nothing wrong with that. So the second thing I was hoping for was that there would be a debate, that RFK would bring in his so-called experts, and then you could bring in medical experts or scientific experts, and then I would love to watch that, okay, over things that there's real doubt over, right? Instead, we have a rando attack on Tylenol based on no evidence. Like Tylenol is not my cousin. I don't care about Tylenol. If it's got a problem, I'm happy to acknowledge that it's got a problem. But brother, you didn't bring any evidence, so how do you expect us to believe you? And how do you expect us to believe you over 99% of the doctors in the world? So as usual, people say something when they're outside the government, then they go inside the government, and it's a disaster, totally taken over by overall corporate rule. And then you get these weirdo quixotic attacks that make no sense from a guy who obviously doesn't understand much about biology or medicine to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, so my favorite conspiracy theory right now is, that Tylenol is, first of all, Tylenol is not the only medication or brand containing acetaminophen. So my favorite conspiracy theory is that Trump, when he was giving his big press conference, he didn't know how to pronounce the word acetaminophen. So he just kept saying Tylenol instead because he recognized that word. And I believe it because he tried to get through the word once and it didn't go well. And he never revisited it again throughout the rest of that press conference. And I have spoken about this before, but that health and wellness to right-wing grifter pipeline is so real. Just go hang out on vegan TikTok for a while. And it is this idea that you want to do good things for your body, you want to be as healthy as possible, but it's true, it's hard to do that in this country because you don't know what's in the water and you don't know what's in the air. We have all these chemicals everywhere, and all these chemicals are very scary because nobody really understands what is going on. Then you have all the processed foods, and so then you say, okay, I'll just clean up my own diet. I'll just eat fresh whole foods. And then you think, well, I don't know, are they spraying pesticides and other chemicals on my vegetables? And okay, maybe I'll start washing them better or try to buy organic, but what does that even mean? And then it just snowballs to the point where you're an anti-vaxxer, you don't know who to trust anymore. And then you get somebody like RFK Jr. who is entering the political realm and he is speaking to all these things. And you say, you know what, at least someone is talking about the fact that the health crisis in this country is real, right? A lot of our government officials don't talk about that. And most people, not most people, but a lot of people who fall into this line of thinking, they would agree that it's probably better to fix the food supply and get the highly processed foods out of our grocery stores, or at least, don't make them cheaper than fresh foods, instead of just giving everybody Ozempic. And that seems to be what they're gonna be doing eventually.
Yeah.
And it's also, I just wanna make this one point real quick. it's very dangerous to just say outright that something like Tylenol or acetaminophen is just outright bad for women, especially, and for pregnant women, especially like when you consider a lot of these health tests that were being done up until maybe 30 years ago, they were only done on men. And then they finally started testing on women because, obviously our bodies are different, but they only test on women specifically whenever they were testing something like pertaining to our hormones and to like our actual, female organs and things like that. Otherwise, things like blood pressure, for example, like what's the difference? It doesn't matter. So women are already at a disadvantage in that sense because our bodies are different, right? And they don't take medication the same way. They have different guidelines for us, but none of that is really as in depth as it should be as far as medical research. And now you have Donald Trump and RFK Jr., neither of whom are doctors again. And they're saying, you know what, just do this. Women, just do this for your bodies. And we know what we're talking about. And if you don't abide by what we're saying, it's obviously because you hate Trump so much. All of it is just very, very dangerous and stupid. Like, it's just stupid.
So my last couple of points are mainly about the glass house I live in. If you noticed, I also never said the word that Yaz is referring to. Okay. And I said that Bobby Kennedy ran into big food. There's some chance I've also run into big food, but in a different way. And then finally, look, at the end of the new thing that we're doing, we're trying to crowdsource a revolution at 8 o'clock Eastern every day. We do the news show 6 to 8. Then we're doing this peaceful revolution at 8 o'clock. And at 8:30, we have interviews. Usually we have Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar today. He's the guy who was a whistleblower on Israel and how they were killing people at the feeding lines, etc. But at the end, we do a little bonus episode for the members, just 5-10 minute quick story of the day, right? Personal story of the day. And today's will be my circumcision story. Okay, so if you guys have never heard that one's a doozy and begins to explain a lot of things. It's a good time to become a member. Hit the join button. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.